Hello, my beautiful co-creators. Lilou here in California on the Juicy Living Tour. And today, I'm with Marilyn King, an ex-Olympic champion in 72 and 76. You're part of the US team.
That's correct.
And there's so much to learn, guys, from... You explain actually to people how to think in an Olympian way. And you call that Olympian Thinking.
That's correct. I had an experience. My event was the pentathlon, 5 track and field events: hurdles, shot put, high jump, long jump, and 800 meters.
Wow.
And when I was training for my 3rd Olympic team, my car was hit by a truck and I was injured and couldn't physically train, I thought, for a couple of weeks. But it kept going on for weeks and weeks. So I said I had to do something, so I got films of the world record holders in all 5 of my events, and I began watching them for 2 or 3 hours a day, thinking I'll train again next week. And it went on for 7 months. So during that period, I also then would go out to the track and stand for 3 or 4 hours and just imagine my hurdles or my starts or whatever I might be doing. And 7 months go by. It's time for the Olympic trials. I have not physically trained. I don't know what else to do, so I have them give me an injection in my back. And I placed 2nd at the Olympic trials for my 3rd Olympic team without physical training for 7 months. So that launched me into the exploration of what is it that allows ordinary people like me to do something extraordinary? And I discovered the whole arena of imagery, visualization, and mental rehearsal. And after about 3 years of study and teaching, I realized it wasn't sufficient for exceptional human performance. And I put together a framework that I call Olympian Thinking, which basically says when ordinary people do something extraordinary, 3 things are always present. So my expertise, I focus in the area of business. What does this mean for business leaders right now, which is extremely exciting work? Education, because we can give this information to kids. And then there are very significant implications for what happens when you apply that framework of Olympian thinking to how we think about peace. So that's what I've been doing.
This is really extraordinary because this is so crucial, as you said, right now, especially in those challenging times, isn't it?
Well, it's a time when you have people, whether it's in your company or in your community or one country to another, who are concerned and their minds are just constantly going over fears all the time. That's as if I was an Olympic athlete and was standing there just thinking, oh, what if I don't clear this and blah, blah, and my mind was only on the fear. There's no way that I should even step up to compete. So if you have a team that is anxious and concerned, that's not the most creative mindset. It's not a high-performance mindset. So right now it really is important in all of those domains that we are really clear. I call it envision the gold. Look at all of the possible scenarios, make plans for the ones that you need to pay attention to from a risk standpoint. But if you're not absolutely clear about what the gold standard is or what your goal is and what your strategy is for getting there and spending your, what I call airtime, right? How much time you spend thinking. You want to spend your airtime on the gold. I'll guarantee you Michael Phelps woke up every morning and the first thing he thought was 8 gold medals. And that changed his attitude, it changed his biochemistry, it changed what he thought about and what he brought to every single moment of the day.
So what did you find out throughout your research about imaginary and about visualization? What did that show? How does that transform, actually, as you say, our brain? Is it new neural pathways that are created? Is there a DNA? What is really the true impact of that? What is the percentage, even if we can go down to it?
Yeah, well, I think what's most interesting in terms of what I discovered were a couple of things. One, we don't have to teach it to people. Our minds work in the form of multisensory images and pictures, and you can't not do it. Day and night, you've got images and pictures and thoughts going on, and they affect your health. If you think, oh my gosh, when everybody turns 40, they go from this kind of a shape to looking like a pear, or, anybody around me gets sick and I always get sick. If those are the kinds of thoughts you have, your behaviors follow in alignment with those, and you get the results that you've been envisioning, even though it's not what you wanted. So the images that we have about our health and well-being, there is a physical body-mind connection and that moves into action. It also affects not just our health, but our performance. That's why you see an athlete stand in front of the high jump bar at a new world's record, take a breath, exhale, and then you can almost see what's going on in their mind in very great detail. They're envisioning exactly what needs to happen. And they thereby increase their chances of that happening than if they were thinking in a less effective way. My hamstring hurts today, I'm really nervous, all of that kind of thing. So it affects our health, our performance, and our future. That one moment I was running on relay teams thinking, oh, I'm just here to have a good time, and it's a good socializer because we moved all the time. I behaved in certain ways. Like many of my teammates, when the coach went in to get his clipboard, everybody would stop and walk, and when he'd come back out, they'd start to run. Well, that was kind of cool. That's what you did as a kid. As soon as I had the thought that I could be in the Olympics because I beat someone who they invited, and I wake up every morning thinking I could be in the Olympics, I would no longer walk when the coach went in to get his clipboard. I started looking for the faster people and the people who trained harder, and I moved to the opposite coast of this country to be with the best. So what and how we think affects your health, your performance in the moment. It affects your future. And for me right now, the exciting part is that it affects our collective future. And my favorite example right now is the people in Egypt of my generation were kind of just acquiescing to, well, this is just how it is. This is just how it is. He's been here for all this time. There's not much they can do about it. You get a new generation of people come along with a slightly different mindset and technology available to them, and in 18 days, that mindset and that one mind that Mubarak must go, and this is our strategy. So what we think affects our health, our performance, our future, and our collective future. So I, am delighted that I get to bring this kind of simple, powerful framework and tools to the three areas of business, education, and peace. I wake up ecstatic every morning.
So how do we set goals, though, that are realistic and at the same time push our boundaries to the next level? How do you find that right medium? What do you recommend?
Well, you used a word that's one of those hot buttons for me, realistic.
Yeah, why I'm saying this to an Olympic champion, G.
Why bother in terms of realistic?
Yeah.
If I had been realistic with a bulging disc in my back and not training and knowing there were younger, faster, more talented women out there who were training every day, it was not realistic. Now, I did not think that I'd be only doing mental training for 7 months. That was not my plan. I kept thinking I'll be better next week and I'll start to train. But nonetheless, it was not realistic for me to be envisioning being in the top 3 when I couldn't physically train and didn't for 7 months. And I think everyone listening, knows of stories of people who had the 3 things that I talk about in terms of Olympian thinking. They have something they're passionate about. When you're passionate, you have energy, you're a creative problem solver, you'll figure out everything. So in terms of realistic, when someone is passionate, don't get in their way. And number 2, if they bring a very particular kind of Olympian thinking that I talk about, as opposed to what we might call stinking thinking, if they bring that powerful kind of thinking to bear, and then the third part is they have an action, game plan, and daily practices, so it's passion, vision, action. If somebody brings those 3 things to bear, why do we need to talk about realistic? Because the kinds of things that people have done with body, mind, and spirit alignment are things that people thought were rather unrealistic.
So do we create then those goals in the visualizing word too? I mean, where do we tap into creating something that empowers us and calls us in action then, and ignite that passion and help us visualize?
Yeah, and I make a distinction between the word, setting goals. Goals are good, and they're helpful and they're useful. When you say goal setting, it's like people's energy is kind of, you can. When you say gold, G-O-L-D, it's like envision your gold. When you wake up every morning and think 8 gold medals, or I could be in the Olympics, or I'm going to get my family out of this part of town and get my kids into college, that's gold.
That's a whole other conversation.
When you wake up every morning and envision your gold, everything changes. Your life changes. And that's part of what I do. Tell people, I have a challenge for you. I'm an Olympian, and I'm going to throw out a challenge. Take the 10-day challenge. Set your clock 5 minutes early, every day for 10 days. Don't get out of bed. Just envision your gold. Whatever would just make your heart sing to accomplish.
Rebecca in the heart.
That's right. And do that for 10 days. You will have changed your behavior, changed your results, and changed your life.
So what is really your gold right now in your life?
There's no question in my mind that when you look at the framework of passion, vision, action as it relates to peace, we've got 2 of the 3 things we need. If we got almost 7 billion people on the planet, how many of them do you think want to live in peace?
7 million?
Yeah.
Billion?
Yep. Pretty close to most of us, all of us, right? And when I think, well, how many of them would be willing to do something if they knew what to do and believed it would make a difference? Well, most of us. But we've got stinking thinking about peace. We are poorly informed. We're misinformed. We don't know As soon as you become well-informed, so that's really what my passion is to bring that third component of Olympian thinking to bear. So I am mobilizing Olympians worldwide to use their bully pulpit, because, everybody wants Olympians to be, on their TV show or come and talk to kids. So for us to speak with one voice about how important it is to envision your gold, and for us as a planet, planetarily, to envision our collective gold. What is the world that we all want to live in? And that work has already been done. The Brahma Kumaris went to 123 countries, asked people the question, and there's a book that's about what's your vision of a better world. And you can see across races and religions and political persuasions and socioeconomics, people talk about the same things. So we actually all do have the same gold in terms of a world that works. Strategies might be a little different, places where it doesn't quite match up, but for the most part, when you talk to people about what kind of world would you like to live in, they all talk about the same thing. So my passion is really inspiring people to wake up every morning and envision that you could be alive right now in a moment on the planet when the shift is on. And we are shifting from a world that has only worked for a few people to a world that works for all.
How do you know that?
Because we see the kinds of speed at which change is happening. So when we see what happened in Egypt and how that has spread through the Middle East, that we have people power, so the kind of, I call them the twins of transparency and accountability. Because we have increased transparency, we can see who you are, we know what you're doing, and we have an increasing ability to hold you accountable. George Bush cannot travel to Europe anymore without being picked up because of the kinds of torture that he sanctioned, and that the United States is a signator. So he will be picked up if he goes to Europe. Jacques Chirac is going on trial, right? They have frozen Mubarak's money and not letting him travel. So we are saying we know who you are, and we have an increasing ability to hold you accountable. And I believe that people are basically good, and they're learning to use technology and peaceful demonstration to make the shifts that need to happen.
So would you say that right now there is a new type of leadership that is emerging, or that already has emerged a little while back? How would you define leadership now, and what do you want to say to individuals watching?
Yeah, I would say that there are certain things about leadership that have not changed, but where it is located is changing. So if you look at the literature, and I do a lot of work in the area of leadership, if you look at the literature, you will find hundreds of traits and qualities that people talk about attributed to leaders. Most of them are also important for most of us. Be a good communicator, how you treat people, all of those kinds of things. But leaders have a couple of unique responsibilities. And I believe, one, it is to have the larger context, so that you have a historical perspective on where we come from, where we are, and where we're going. And that you also have the larger context in seeing how these things that looked like they were separate before are now coming together. So for leaders in my world right now, I hold this framework I call your story of now. As a leader, you have to have a compelling story of now for your company, for your country, whomever, that people are excited about. And you also need to know what the gold standard is. If you don't know what the gold standard is for a company in a world that works for all, you should not be in leadership. So those are the two things that I bring to leaders. And I think the change has happened, that we're now understanding that it doesn't have to live in one person. It can live in 100,000 people who are of one mind. Mubarak must go, and our strategy is peaceful demonstration. And from an action standpoint, people recognize that, you mean all I need to do is go down to the square and show up? And this could happen. There's something I can do that will make a difference. That's leadership. And that all of those 100,000 people took leadership responsibility. If they saw a fight breaking out or people were attacking a reporter, they knew that this was not good, and everyone took responsibility. If there was a child that was lost or needed a bathroom, everyone took responsibility. So it was a leaderful, global example of the shift in leadership from an individual to how we can collectively take leadership responsibility. So I almost need a seatbelt. I just want to jump up and down. I'm so excited.
You're juicy.
Oh my gosh, totally juiced. I'm totally juiced.
Wow. So how this is amazing, because I'm really excited about the leadership that is waking up, and I feel that we're all leaders too right now, and we all have, instead of putting it in the hands of the government, or we it's time to step up and because when, as an athlete, and we were talking to this earlier here with the team, we're just talking how, you tap in this energy when you're an athlete, when you're an Olympic champion. You go beyond. I mean, you must even surprise yourself. So I guess this is part of the Olympic thinking too, as leaders, that we could be quite surprised by what's coming up by us doing the first step.
Yes. And for me, it's the spirit part. When if people go to my website, they can download the basic framework of Olympian thinking that says passion, vision, action. And it's really body, mind, and spirit. And you can't always talk spirit in the corporate world. I couldn't even talk passion when I first started this work. I had to talk about having a mission that matters, because that was good left brain stuff. But, now we can, everybody's, Tom Peters, anyway. So we can now talk about passion, and we're beginning to be able to talk about spirit, because what you're talking about, in my opinion, is the human spirit. When you get an elderly woman who can pick a car up off a kid, right, because the jack broke, if you had given her $1 million the day before and told her, I'll give you $1 million, she couldn't have done it. But when the human spirit shows up and she sees exactly what needs to be done and she moves into action, magical things happen when you align body, mind, and spirit. And those things usually are often aligned by accident. We now know how to align them by design. And that's what Olympian thinking does. And, it always comes down, in my opinion, to, I'm a very pragmatic person. So I'm always looking for, so what do we do with this information? I think the most important thing we can do is to pay attention to what happens upon awakening. If you wake up in the morning and go, it's Tuesday and rant, that's how your day will probably go. If you wake up and you say, it's Tuesday and I intend to win 8 gold medals, or I believe that we're at a major shift point on the planet and that we could live in a world that works for all time, and I want to play my part, you will behave differently. So for me, it's about, upon awakening, that you should begin your day the Olympian way and envision your gold and envision our collective gold.
Tell us about that energy, that flow, that kind of like, all of a sudden you're like taken on a cloud, or there is something, right? Is it how you feel as an Olympic champion when you're breaking some records as you did?
Well, I think it's more than when you break the records, because it won't happen if it hasn't been happening every single day up until that point. That you wake up every day, and I use Michael Phelps because it's an easy, kind of current, example, that when you wake up and think something as outrageous as 8 gold medals, just imagine you're being asleep and then you wake up. If that's what comes to your mind, you don't feel depressed. You feel 8 gold medals. Your physiology changes. There's different hormones pumping. There's, everything shifts in your body physiologically. And that creates new thoughts that lead to new behaviors and could lead you to that outrageous result. So it's not just, in the moment you step into the flow and time slows down and all that. No. It's every single day for years and years before that. And there certainly are moments when something comes together spontaneously, but from the sports standpoint, it comes from years worth of envisioning the gold.
And I love the fact that, some people say when you're swimming too, you have to gain momentum and be ready to catch the wave. So you have to create a certain momentum too and a certain speed to life to see those waves coming, to see those opportunities.
Well, and that's a really, really important point, because there are some theories out there where they talk about, if you think about something, then these other kindred things are magnetically attracted to you. It's not quite how I understand it. What I do understand is that when I was thinking I'm just kind of an also-ran and running track because it's an easy way to make friends, I went through my day in a certain way. As soon as I started thinking I could be in the Olympics, I noticed for the first time in the hallway that there were scholarships available for out-of-state tuition. I would never have seen it. It didn't magically appear. It was always there. And now I see it because it's actually hooked to something that I care about. So synchronicity, there's a truth in synchronicity, but it's also, there's a level of magic that we can take away from it. And it's just because there is so much input into the brain in every second that the brain has to sort that which is important from unimportant. So if I think I could go to the Olympics and I have to go across the country and I need more money and a better summer job, I start to notice different things in the environment that were always there that I now act on that increase my chances of success.
So we really do co-create our reality, don't we?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
100%.
Yeah.
And what are the tools that you use on a daily basis? So you use maybe affirmation, it sounds like, too? Or?
Well, an affirmation is just, a way to give language to how can we pay attention to what we think. Because most people wake up in the morning and your mind goes onto autopilot. And whatever your first thought is, it's connected to a second, to a third, and then all day long all these thoughts are jammed up against each other and you don't think about them. If you develop a practice of an affirmation, that has you interrupt that autopilot and interject a thought that will guide you in a different way. Mm-hmm. So I think affirmations are helpful and useful. I actually have one that Bruce Jenner was a part-time training partner in training for 1976. He was the gold medalist in 1976. And he allowed me to call what I'm talking about the Bruce Jenner technique. And I tell people, like I was saying earlier, set your clock 5 minutes early. Mm-hmm. And just spend that 5 minutes envisioning your goal. Bruce envisioned that he would win the gold medal, set the world record, and retire in Montreal. And he went on a 5-mile run every morning, and that's what he was envisioning. And so I say, you don't even have to go run 5 miles. Just lay in bed 5 minutes early and envision your goal. You'll feel a change in your body. You'll start to think about your day differently. As you go through your day, you'll see new things and do new things and increase the chances of achieving that. So I call it Begin Your Day the Olympian Way. Mm-hmm. And I actually have a CD that you don't even have to try to think about it. You can just turn on this little, CD, and it will guide you through a process of envisioning your day the Olympian way.
How about the end of the day?
I have another Olympian friend who has a wonderful little device that she calls Review Preview. So that when you wake up in the morning, you're going to preview your day. Mm-hmm. Now, is this in alignment with winning 8 gold medals? Mm-hmm. And I'm going to eliminate the things that aren't and do more of the things that are. At the end of the day, I want to turn around and review my day. So how did I do as someone who intends to win 8 gold medals or intends to make a contribution to a world that works for all time? So I love that review preview at the end of the day. And, I say for me personally, my morning work in particular is a significant amount of time set aside for my spiritual work. Because for me, that is the source. And you can call it, passion, you can call it motivation, all of that. But I know that if we keep looking deeper and deeper, that we come to, what is our spiritual practice that speaks to that part of who we are.
So where are you at in your spiritual journey then right now? Where do you feel you're at?
Well, a little plug here for Barbara Marx Hubbard. I heard you talk about co-creators.
Oh, I love Barbara.
Yeah.
Oh, 81 years old and so sparkling. We just went there at her place a few weeks ago. She's lovely.
She sent out a lovely email at the end of the year and gave us a little gift of this practice that she does in the morning. And she talks about that moment upon awakening. Mm-hmm. And that we don't want to go into a place where we see ourselves as separate from the creative force. That we actually identify as that creative force. So I've been doing that for months now, along with some other pieces of it. But it's a mindset practice, so that it aligns body, mind, and spirit.
And finally, my favorite, there's the question of the heart. What do you think is the role of the heart in this? And is radical transformation, can radical transformation happen through love? What is your view on the role of the heart in all of this?
Well, I'm one of those. I'm a lifelong learner, mm-hmm. And so heart math. Of the heart math people. Yeah. So all of that work about understanding the intelligence of the heart. That when people talk about intuition, that when they did those scientific studies, that actually the heart knew things before it showed up as a brainwave mm-hmm. pattern. So I give quite primary credit and credibility and focus and attention to matters of the heart. But I think like many of us, I'm on the journey, mm-hmm. Like many people. But You know, it's like that moment when I went from thinking, oh, I'm an also-ran and here to have fun to, you know, I could be in the Olympics. You know, something changed inside me, and it didn't change down in my foot or in the back of my head. It happened, you know, here in my chest. It's like, I could be in the Olympics? You mean maybe I could be one of those people? I mean, it just took over my whole body, but it started here, you know, as a feeling. And from that feeling to the thought, you know, that I could be in the Olympics, you know, it changed my life. So the research says we have about 52,000 thoughts a day. The good news, you know, that's, you know, that's cool. One new thought can change your whole life. The problem is that most of the thoughts that most people have today are the same ones they had yesterday. So the ability to think anew in a way that engages the heart will move us to action.
This is so inspiring, isn't it? Oh my goodness, very, very juicy. Thank you for this moment. Thank you so much, Marilyn. Thank you.
Yeah, you're more than welcome. This was really delightful, and I really appreciate what you're doing in this journey that you're on, and that you're bringing all of this fabulous information and these great interviews and wonderful, spirited, deeply intelligent, thoughtful, passionate people, you know, through the internet, so that everyone can access the kinds of information and people. And I'll just say in closing, one of the things that was life-altering for me is my first Olympic team was Munich, Germany in 1972, and I just squeaked on to the Olympic team. So when I went there, I kind of looked like Twiggy next to the East Germans and the Russians, and it was like, you know, what am I doing here? But walking around the Olympic Village with 7-foot-tall Japanese basketball players and little 72-pound Romanian gymnasts and every race and religion and political persuasion, what happened for me there was really life-altering in that I looked around and I thought, wow, we are so much more alike than we are different. And when I thought about how amongst our differences and highly competitiveness of these people, how was it that we lived in peace in this village? And I thought two things. One, every single person in here had respect. They had respect for themselves, and they had respect for every other person who was there. So if you want to have an Olympic Village experience, walk around your day and just imagine that you're the best that you can be at something, and so is everybody else, and walk around with respect. And the second part was curiosity. So you walk around the village, I don't know what country you're from, I don't know what sport you're in, but I have respect and I'm really curious. And you start asking questions. So I believe that we are in the process of creating, in my framework, a global Olympic Village, in which people and young people are much more amenable to this, you know, than some of the elder people right now, because you can't fool them about who young people are in Russia or who young people are in another country, because they can see and talk to each other. So I believe that we are in a shift to what I would call a global Olympic Village, where people live with a high level of respect and curiosity.
You are on a big mission for 8 gold medals. Thank you. Thank you so much, Marilyn.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you. Much love, my beautiful co-creators. Big kiss from, actually, we're in Oakland, California.
We are in Oakland, California.
On the GC Living Tour. Much love. Bye.